Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
Today we're talking about asbestos and due diligence. We're coming at it from the point of view of how it can hurt your pocket more than what we normally talk about, which is compliance with regulations and keeping people safe.
Yeah, or how you could save money.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Which is, if you're thinking about asbestos prior to purchase, you may be able to save some money, get it off the actual purchase price.
That is a very good point. Just one thing, we're recording this from my house today, and I've got my dog wandering about, having a little sniff. So you might hear him
banging about,
playing with his bone, and he's got this bat thing that he loves, and I don't know why, but
he's dragging it around, doesn't he?
He does. So yeah, if he does do that, apologies, but hopefully it won't affect the podcast.
Won't be too distracting.
And so yeah, at the end of the day, what can you say? It's a miniature poodle. He's cute, so you can't complain too much.
So asbestos then, thinking about it prior to purchase, really, isn't it?
Yes, that's the key point, because by the time you get in bed and you bought it, you could end up with a bit of a doozy, couldn't you?
Yeah, it's a doozy. Yeah, no, definitely. So what do we mean by, and how can we sort of counteract that? So I suppose it's gathering the information firsthand, see if there is actually any documentation for the property. Yeah. So it's something you definitely want to be asking for, isn't it?
Definitely. It's kind of a desktop study of information, is there any information online about the building or its past use? Are there any plans or architectural information as built? Literally anything, because all these things can highlight whether there was asbestos there or not. Yeah. And you want to treat it in the same way as you would do other things that you need when you're purchasing property. So structural survey.
Yeah, all the searches.
Yeah, all the searches, flood, risk, all of those kind of elements. This should be in there as much as those, if not more.
Yeah, and a lot of time is spent on those things, isn't there? There's a lot of solicitors' fees go into looking into, is there any confidence on the properties? Is there any sort of flood risk, et cetera, et cetera? Even sometimes land contamination and sort of land uses, where what the properties are actually built on, the history of the actual land. But one of the things that is most commonly overlooked is asbestos, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like if it is overlooked and you do purchase a property that, I don't know, on the face of it, it looks like a good deal. But then when you get in there and you have a refurb survey done and you need to do work on the property, that's when it can really kind of come back to bite you, because
that's your problem.
Exactly that. It is.
It's down on you. You bought it. It's your asbestos then.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're thinking about it front end, then you can open up the negotiation, can't you?
Definitely.
And going back to, if you haven't got the information or the information isn't being made available to you, then as prior to purchase, have a survey done and then actually identify what is actually in the building. Especially if you're looking at, spending a couple of £100,000 on a property and you can spend a few £100 on an asbestos survey, that's going to save you money.
Yeah.
Definitely going to save you money, or peace of mind at least.
And on the scale, you could be looking at purchasing a huge office block, which is going to be 20 million quid. But the thing is with that, the bigger the property, the bigger the risk of asbestos. Yeah. And the cost for, I don't know, like you say, a house or something like that for a couple of £100,000, all right, you could come across some asbestos, it could cost 10, 20k, whatever. Yeah. But if it's a £20 million building, it could be £5 million for the asbestos, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So the costs can increase and the risk can increase on that.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point of asking for the information before you purchase the property. Because if they don't have it, well, why? Because they should be legally compliant. And secondly, if they're not kind of coming forwards with it, well, what is the problem with that?
Yeah, exactly.
Do they know something? Yeah, are they trying to hoodwink you a little bit?
If it is an older building, chances are, there's going to be a risk of asbestos there. I think what we're trying to emphasise is you could be inheriting a greater risk. So you could be purchasing a property which has got asbestos in it, but it's got asbestos that's in a really damaged, poor condition, that before you can even occupy it, you've got to put it right. So that's lots of money you've got to be spending out, before you've even got in there.
Exactly. And if you haven't factored that into the cost and it comes as a big surprise, it will be a big surprise.
Exactly that.
We've said it a million times on the podcast. When things go wrong with asbestos, or when you're dealing with asbestos, it can be very expensive. But if you've factored that into the costs, if you're looking at taking a property on to flip it, and you've actually factored the asbestos costs in, like anything, happy days, it doesn't matter because it's all in there, it's all accounted for. It's when it's not been accounted for that it can really kind of...
wipe profit off.
Yeah, it would just kill the deal.
Yeah.
But if you've already purchased it and the deal's killed, well, tough luck. You're stuck.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what can we do for somebody looking to buy a property?
What, as in, what can we do to help them?
Yeah, to make that decision.
Well, I suppose it is like going back to what we've kind of already said is, you need to gather the information initially, don't you, to see what is the risk of asbestos being there. So look at the building age, look at the construction, look at the uses of it, go back through any historical data that they've got on the building. If they've got asbestos records, surveys, removal records, going back all through that and sort of doing a desktop study on that to identify what is the risk. But if that's not available, definitely have it surveyed before you've even purchased it. Before you've put any money across the table, do, as part of your, standard portfolio on checking these properties before you buy it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't mean have a full asbestos survey, but you can have, because I'm thinking of like the larger scale properties, like buying hotels, offices, really big industrial estates, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to fork out for an entire survey for that whole property or portfolio that you're looking to buy. But what you could spend money on is a decent asbestos consultant to go and kind of, in the olden terminology, it would be like a type 1 survey.
Yeah, a walk around.
Yeah, basically a walk around, an identification, like a visual identification, a presumption survey, perhaps with a little bit of sampling in there.
Yeah.
It's like indicative, and then it can show you, look, I do believe this is asbestos, I've sampled it, yes it is, I think it could be here, here and here as well.
Yeah, the surveyor would go into the building and go, right, let's look at this building as a whole. If there's going to be asbestos in this, it's more likely to be in these locations: plant rooms, service rooms, risers, back of house, in ceiling voids, and take a representative sort of overview of those types of areas. And just to see if there's any remnants or suspect materials there.
Exactly, and that's the bit where it starts to highlight whether there's asbestos or not.
Yeah.
And if there is, and it's highlighted, do you know what? I think there could be a hell of a lot of asbestos here. Well, at that point, you've not bought it yet. You can then take that back to the table and say, look, our asbestos consultant has found X, Y, Z. We know it's going to cost this amount to kind of remediate and sort out. Can we look at the deal?
Yeah.
Or you might want to take it that step further and then like kind of
the full survey
to go, look, we've found all of this lot which you didn't either know about or you didn't know about, but you're being sneaky.
Which happens.
Which does happen.
Yeah.
When money gets involved with anything, it does happen. People do look to make a quick buck and a fast buck. And you have to protect yourself from...
Yeah, it's like buying a second-hand car, isn't it? It's like, it's clean, look, it's all polished up.
Yeah.
It looks shiny.
But it's a turd inside.
Exactly. You open the bonnet, it's a bang of spanners.
Yeah. So, that is something you can do is that, like I say, you start with the due diligence. If there is desktop information, brilliant. If not, partial survey, perhaps a full survey. And then, like I say, bring that back to the table to kind of have that discussion around to see whether you can save money, whether something can be done on the deal for you.
Yeah, you can use it as a bit of a stick to battle the price down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly that, because depending on what you want to do, what your scheme is, it will depend on what you've got to do with the asbestos.
Yeah.
Well, that was a short but sweet one. My dog's been quite quiet, so that's good.
Yeah, not too bad.
Enjoying his bone. I hope you enjoyed that one. Remember, asbestos first, not last.